Okay then, we have more Overwatch League news. Actually, it's been a big day yesterday because we got the Florida Mayhem announcements at last, and we also got announcements out of New York Excelsior, which means the only team that hasn't made announcements now, I believe, is London in terms of its roster. So yeah, it's really interesting. These are some really interesting ones though. Like, I'm very keen to see where this all goes. So let's start off with the New York Excelsior then. And they have announced their tank line. So, their off-tank will be Bianca, returning to the New York Excelsior after the 2020 season. Bianca, I thought, was a really stable pick for the New York Excelsior. I think he was more stable than Hotburler was last season alongside Mano. Now, I think it's a good pickup. I think also, if they stick to it, I think Bianca can grow and become a really good off-tank, because he is still young, he's still very early in his career. If he gets the right coaching, I think he will be a great off-tank for the New York Excelsior. So I don't mind this, I think that's a good move. Second of all, we have Yakpung. So Yakpung, he's been in the Overwatch League before. He was with the Toronto Defiant. It was an okay Toronto Defiant roster, it was nothing to write home about, but Yakpung is still very young in his career. He has been O2 Blast. O2 Blast won Season 1 of 2020 in Korea, beating Runaway 4-2 in the final. Yakpung was their main tank. Yakpung has kind of had a little bit of a renaissance since joining O2 Blast after being with the Toronto Defiant, where it didn't go massively well. But I still think Yakpung has the potential to be a good main tank. I really do. It'll be interesting to see how he settles into New York, but it's a very young tank line for New York now. Not very young. You're looking at probably, what, 19 and 18? 19 and 19? 19 and 18, I think. So, I like this. This looks like a future development program for New York Excelsior, and I think it's a good road to go down. It will be interesting to see how they square up against the APAC region, which I'm expecting New York Excelsior now to stay in, considering they seem to be sticking with the South Korean roster, alongside Jonak, obviously. So, that obviously, yesterday, we also got the news, actually no, it was the day before, that Philly Fusion are moving to the APAC region, which means the APAC region is going to become tougher. I mean, we're expecting London not to be there, but we're not expecting anyone else to move, I don't think. So, we are expecting to see Philly go up against the likes of Shanghai, against New York, Seoul. It's going to make it tougher for this new New York squad. My goodness me, that's difficult to say. But I think it can work. So I don't mind this tank line. I'm interested to see how it does for the New York Excelsior. I think it has a lot of potential. That's what I would say. Okay, so now we will move on to the Florida Mayhem, who have announced their 2021 roster. It's going to be interesting to see how this Florida Mayhem squad does, because obviously a little while ago they lost Fate. Fate moved over to the Shanghai Dragons as they lost Fearless to the Dallas Fuel. So they had to replace their main tank. They also had to replace their main support. Their main support, in my opinion, last season was a weakness with Chris on that Lucio. And therefore, they decided to get rid of Chris and a lot of the backups they had, and now they're going to ship in a new main support. And I tell you what, I am not overly down on this Florida Mayhem squad right now. So first of all, let's go through the retained list. They were already retaining Gangnam Jin and Yaki. They were on 2-year contracts when they were signed last year, so they were tied down. They will also be retaining BQB. They will be retaining Gargoyle, which I think is just great moves. Like, really good moves. They are two great players. They did really well last season, BQB and Gargoyle. They're essential to this Florida Mayhem squad and cannot be lost. And therefore, they are keeping them, and it's very good to see. But we obviously have to follow in with these new players because they need to fill other spots. Now, the Florida Mayhem roster is comprised of 7. It is a small roster. Like, they've got 3 DPS, 2 tanks, and 2 supports. Let's start off with their DPS signing then, because this is probably the most unremarkable one of the signings. They are bringing in Checkmate from Mosaic Gaming in Korea. He is a young player. He's only 19. He has a lot of projectile, but he also has a great tracer and things like that. He reminds me very much of Yaki. He's got a great Echo, Hanzo, Reaper, Genji, etc. And he's coming in from Mosaic Gaming. He was with Bootlicker before. Now, Bootlicker don't exist anymore. But Bootlicker were a team that made quite a a Storm in Korea at one point, because Korea is heavily known for having these stalwart teams, right? Genji, Runaway, O2 Blast, etc. Element Mystic. And these teams generally are top of there, and they don't get knocked off. Well, Bootlicker did just that during the season, the first season of this year, where Bootlicker actually took a weak title, defeating Element Mystic. And it was unheard of, this team that had come up from Open Division. So, it's actually crazy. Actually crazy to do that, and he was part of that squad. So, he's clearly got some sort of knack to him. Kuki is a good coach as well. I think this is actually a decent pickup. He's not going to start. It's going to be BKB and Yaki. We know that. That's the Florida Mayhem DPS line. But Checkmate, I think, is also a great player to have on the squad as a versatility option, but also as a backup. So I'm not actually against this pickup, although it is the weakest of the lot. Now let's move to filling this main tank role then. Now, obviously, as the off-season moved on, we saw more and more of the options dwindle away for the Florida Mayhem. I wanted the Florida Mayhem to pick up Sado. I think he would have been the best option for them. He ends up going to the Toronto Defiant and following KDG. So that wasn't an option. The option they've gone with is a very experienced Overwatch League main tank, although not at the top of the Overwatch League. This is ex-Dallas Fuel and ex-Los Angeles Gladiators main tank OG. So, I think he could be the weakest part of this roster. I don't dislike OG. I think Fate is possibly a more consistent option. However, Kuki could get the best out of OG. OG's history, Dallas Fuel last season, the season before I should say, well, that's just no, isn't it? Let's be honest. It's Dallas Fuel. But Gladiators last season, he was okay. He was okay. And I think OG can be very meta dependent. I'm not going to lie. I think it's a stable pickup for the Florida Mayhem, but I think it's arguably the weakest point of this starting roster. I'm not going to lie. I think Gargoyle is possibly a little bit better. Then we see Gangnam Jin and Yaki alongside BQB. They're all better in my opinion. And then we look at the main support. Oh, the segue was beautiful. So, the main support last season was Chris. And the main support they now have is miles better in my opinion. This is Slime. So Slime left the Seoul Dynasty earlier on in this off-season. He was previously at Vancouver Titans and then previously before that at Runaway. So, Slime is a great player. And I think he is a massive improvement on Chris. Like, a massive improvement. I think this is a really good pickup from the Florida Mayhem. There were rumours earlier in the off-season that they would pick up Sanguinar. It's not going to be a Sanguinar. I think this is better than Sanguinar. I think Slime and Gangnam Jin could actually pair up pretty well to be a very good support line for the Florida Mayhem in this coming season, actually. I already rate Gangnam Jin very highly. I think he did very well on the Mayhem roster, even though it wasn't completely top level. With the I say not top level, but it just wasn't consistently up with the shock. But I think Slime, he really rounds out the support line. I really like a support line of Slime and Gangnam Jin, I'm not going to lie. I think it could be the best part of this roster. Possibly. I mean, Yaki can be a bit sink or swim, but I do like this. And you're looking at a lot of ex-Runaway boys now when you think about it. I mean, yeah, they're not the same era, but when you got Yaki, you got Gangnam Jin, you've got Slime, all of which have been at Runaway and will have experience of that Runner-Flowervin pairing. And I think I was worried about the Mayhem. I was worried about the Mayhem when I saw they weren't announcing stuff very quickly, and then I saw them lose Fate, and then I saw Sada go over to Toronto. I was like, what are Mayhem going to do? Nah, I feel like Mayhem is slipping here. I'm not down on this Mayhem squad anymore. I think this is a squad, depending on the moves coming up, that can be better than the Toronto Defiant, who have made exponential improvements, and it can compete with some of the best in the league. But I don't think it's going to be that top tier. I don't think it's going to be that San Francisco Shock tier, which could be comprised of Dallas Fuel, could be comprised of the Gladiators maybe. But I do think it can be a challenger. I do think with the right coaching, which Kuki is generally good at coaching, I think this team can be a challenger. I do. I like its support line and I like its DPS. The only caveat I have about this team is OG. And that is something we will have to see in time. But yeah, really interesting day yesterday. Really interesting day, and oh boy. Yeah, and then the Philly news. Don't worry, we're going to do a video on the Philly news about the APAC change. That's going to be an interesting one. That's going to be a really interesting one. I keep saying interesting a lot. I would say interesting way too much in my videos. I realize that. Hey, you want to join a Discord server? Links in the video description. Also, all the Illusion Game stuff is now, gaming stuff is now in the description, including all Twitters for all teams. Pogu! Illusion Gaming is expanding at an exponential rate, and I'm very proud of it. And there is a thing coming soon, if you want to support Illusion Gaming. Spoilers! But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you'd like to give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.